Good day, collectors and viewers. Social Distance Warrior is back, and today we're going to look at Obi Wans Jedi Master and trainer, Qui Gon Jinn. Now, Qui Gon Jinn, of course, made his first appearance in our first prequel movie back in 1999, Episode 1, Phantom Menace. Always fascinating for, I think, all of us, fascinating for me was at the time you had Star Wars, you had Empire, you had Jedi. You never had Jedis other than Luke Skywalker. You had Ben Kenobi, but he was a former Jedi in the original movie and he passed away. He was killed quickly by Darth Vader. And then we saw an older Yoda as well, and then they trained Luke Skywalker, and we finally saw him as a Jedi Knight, but he was the only one through those first three original trilogy movies. We fast forward 20 plus years, and George Lucas decides he's going to make new Star Wars movies and finish off his story and tell the story of Anakin Skywalker. And of course, The Phantom Menace takes place prior to the original trilogy. And we get to see many, many Jedis, much to our pleasure. And Qui-Gon, of course, is one of them. Qui-Gon, played by Liam Neeson in the original Star Wars movies. Again, one of my favorite characters. And it's amazing how the great characters always seem to get killed off. Qui-Gon was killed off in Episode 1, and spoiler alert, so was Darth Maul, even though he's made a return in animated form and in the big picture form on the Solo movie. But Qui-Gon recently, again, in the Obi Wan series, finally get to see him as a Force ghost, which was awesome, because we always had that line at the end of the Revenge of the Sith from Yoda telling Obi-Wan that, your former master wants to meet with you and train you in the ways of the Force. So that was a great connection there. And action figure wise, as you can see in front of you here, they went nuts with action figures once Episode 1 came out. Hasbro decided they're going all out, and for some people it was exhausting. For some people like myself, you had to have every single version of every single character that ever came out, and Qui-Gon was no exception. No matter how minute the change or what the action feature was on the character at the time, if it was a new Star Wars figure, at the time I had to have it. And of course I had some spending money as I had a job. So action figure wise, Qui-Gon made his debut in 1999 as well. With that release of the movie, there was a midnight extravaganza in the same month where we got to see new characters. And you lined up at midnight and you went to your local store. I'm up here in Canada, so that was at a Zellers here in Toronto. And by the time I got inside to get some action figures, someone had gone through everything. I was able to pick up remnants. I was able to pick up some of the main characters. Qui-Gon was unfortunately not one of them. This store cleaned out all of its Episode 1 merchandise at the midnight event. I'd imagine the managers and the staff got a pretty good bonus for having that midnight event because they managed to clean everything out. There was a lot of excitement. New Star Wars movie for the first time in 20 plus years. And merchandise wise, everybody's jumping all over it, thinking it's going to be worth money. I remember people standing in line with me with their grandparents, with their parents, bringing extra cash, planning to buy anything that they could find and take it back, thinking they're never going to see it again. So I managed to pick up a few things that night, but I didn't get my Qui-Gon until the following day, going to a Walmart of all places, of course, in a different location. Sure enough, they had a restock, and I was able to get the missing characters, including Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. So action figure-wise, the first release of Qui-Gon with the Comtech chip was the Jedi Duel. Now, Comtech chips were the big, I guess you can say, pack-in feature, selling feature that comes with the action figures. And they've made nice stands. So they had a nice figure picture there. And they have a little chip that's see-through on there to try and show you that somehow it's high-tech. And if you got the Comtech reader and put this over the Comtech reader, you could have your figure standing on it. It would say, recite lines from the movie in really strange pitched dialogue. For some of them, I could swear it's not even the actor pronouncing the lines. But for some of them, maybe just the fact that the dialogue was just very, very poor. The sound quality of the dialogue was poor. So that's the stand. It's an awesome little pack-in thing that came with a figure because you could stand your character on it. Nice little picture of them on there. And then if you flip that around to the back, you can see that he's number 1 in the Episode 1 line. So he holds a special place there. has the status Jedi Master Qui Gon Jinn. So figure himself, that's what he looks like. And you can see they've come a long way. They really went to a realistic look on these characters as far as body proportions. They never matched the likeness exactly on the character, but if you ask me, for most of these characters in episode 1, the sculpting, that's pretty darn good sculpting, paint and everything on these characters, considering they didn't have the technology to do scan technology on the faces. So that's come a long way. You see I have him holding his lightsaber, so he does have some extra articulation on there, which we're going to look at in a second. So that's Qui-Gon holding his lightsaber at the stance. That's pretty much what you can do with them if you're going to have the lightsaber in both hands. But I displayed him like that for years. So let's take that lightsaber out of his hand. And we'll even see the lightsabers have come a long way as well. At the time, if we look at that lightsaber handle, we'll see it's fully painted. It does have the little button there to turn it on, turn it off, the ignite switch. Nice clear green blade, which is nice, handle fully painted. And what was really interesting with these figures is that as we got more Jedis in the prequels, every single one had their own unique lightsaber hilt, which was news to me. I wasn't even aware that the lightsaber hilts were going to be different, and sure enough, it became a very, very big thing, and you know which character's holding which lightsaber based on the hilt. So that's Qui-Gon's figure itself. You can see here he does have, standard articulation that we had in the Power of the Force 2 line prior to the Episode 1 line. You can turn his head side to side. Okay, arms just go up and down, both sides, and they do have a swivel there at the elbow, so you can turn him back and forth to hold the lightsaber. He does have added articulation here at the wrist as well, so you can turn that wrist up and down holding the lightsaber. But you can see, based on that figure is having that fixed position there at the elbow, you can't do much other than just have him holding his lightsaber, or you can have him maybe with his arms back on his waist, thinking what he's going to do with Anakin Skywalker. As far as articulation here at the waist, you can turn him side to side, so that's standard stuff there. Down here, he does have his robe with a slit there on the pant leg, but as a result of it, you can't really do much. You can't have him sitting because it gets in the way. It is a softer plastic, so if you really wanted to make him sit, you could. You're just going to deform that plastic for a bit there. No articulation at the knees for the figures at the time. You can see one leg is straight, one leg has a bit of an action pose stance to it, but he stands nicely. Underneath here, we can see he's got his foot pegs, and there on the bottom, you can see it says Hasbro China. And then on the other foot, it actually says 1998 Lucasfilm Limited, because they were probably making these things the year in advance in preparation for a massive release in 1999. So that's Qui-Gon from the front. That's Qui-Gon from the side. And if I lift his arm up there, you can see the nice sculpting on his belt there. On the side, it's not a separate piece, but it's sticking out, so it gives it a nice realistic look. And then that's Qui-Gon from the back, and you can see his hair draping over the back of his shoulders, over his back. So nice realistic look to Qui-Gon. And you hold him from the side, there's no doubt that that's Qui-Gon Jinn, which is awesome for me at the time. And it's got some, weathering or grayish look in the hair there to show that it's not just one clear gray color or brown color. It's got a grayish, a grayish brown color to him with his little Jedi braid holding the hair together there in the back, or hair braid, whatever you want to call that, in the back there. So that's the Qui-Gon that we got released from the Episode 1. That is the very, very first Qui-Gon. Okay, so we wouldn't have to wait long. They'd get lots of releases of different figures and characters and different versions of main characters from the Episode 1 line. And a little bit later on in 1999, probably about a month later, we got Qui-Gon Naboo version with the robes on. So that's this figure over here. Again, he comes with that Comtech chip there as well, so we can remove that. We can see the picture. It's like the hologram picture that they're going with on the other ones as well. That's another version of Qui-Gon there. So it was nice to collect these things. And on the back, you can see he's number 14. So it wasn't really even much time between the first and second figure release. I remember it feeling like it was a long time, but it's going to be hard to believe how much we're going to get in 1 year. Just stay tuned. Let's keep going. So that's his stand. Here's the figure. Again, it's a newer sculpt of Qui-Gon, brand new sculpt. He does have his robes on here. He does have a brand new hair sculpt because he's got a piece of his hair coming over the front and then a piece coming down the back there. Okay, so they've given him a different look. Again, figures painted detail is awesome on these characters. If I bring that head up close, you can see the pupils and everything is painted perfect. We don't have any issues here with the characters having, you know, cross eyes or not the people painted in. I hate that. And one thing that I always loved on my action figures is those eyes have to be painted perfect, or they're basically broken toys for me. Because that's what I look at the character. I look at the likeness, and he's got a nice, you know, look to his face there. He's got a nice little pointy nose. You can see from the side. Very nice likeness of, again, of Liam Neeson, Qui Gon Jinn, from that movie, considering how long ago it was and what technology they had to work with. So he's got his lightsaber in his hand. It's a similar lightsaber that we looked at already, so we're not going to look at that again. But we will notice over here that he does have another one that can sit on his belt here. So an unlit blade, which is neat. So we can pull that off just to show you. So on his belt here, if I can just get that out. Bear with me. He does have, you can see the paint kind of rubbed off there a little bit because I never take that off. But on the belt there, you can see there's a little hole that you can put the hilt on. So that was a new thing that they were playing with, and you can put that lightsaber back in there. I just hope I don't break mine. On this review over here, we'll get that nicely on his belt there as well. So that you can see what he looks like standing there, and that's how he was in his robes on Naboo. Again, they're not soft good robes, but still a nice different look for the character. And at the time, they also released an Obi Wan. So this will be the version that we see at the very beginning of the movie, of course, and then afterwards when they land on Naboo on Theed, when they're meeting up with the Queen as well. So articulation-wise on the head does turn side to side. Okay, motion-wise there we go. Not much. The hair kind of gets in the way, but we do have that feature. The arms do go up and down. Okay, he does have articulation there at the wrist, so you can turn his arms around at the wrist, which is a nice feature. So you can have him holding his lightsaber. Doesn't have to be directly up. You can turn it to the side. He does have this robe that is a separate piece sitting over, but there's no point in taking it off because you have the arms that are sculpted with the robe here. And if you take that off, he's going to have two different colors on underneath with his arms. It's just not going to look proper. He does have articulation here at the waist, but again, the robe kind of gets in the way. It stops how much motion you have, but you still do have a little bit of articulation there. As far as the legs, they do come up, but again, the robe gets in the way. It does have that slit on the sides there, but it does get in the way from you doing much with that. No articulation at the knees, just straight legs coming down there. On the other arm over here, we can see there is an extra swivel there added just above the elbow, so between the elbow and the shoulder, and that gives you the option to move that arm in and out if he's holding his lightsaber or exposing his lightsaber on his belt there. See? So that's a nice little feature that they've added there. So that's what he looks like from the front, Qui-Gon does. And underneath here, we can see he's got his foot pegs, and again, Hasbro China, and this one does say 1999 underneath there. So that's the second version we got of him. That's what he looks like from the side. Okay, and then that's what he looks like from the back, and you can see how nicely sculpted it is on the back as well. All the little folds in his robe to have it sitting nicely. You can even see the top piece here of his hood hanging back under his hair, and everything sits and flows really nicely there for an action figure. No complaints from me on that side there. That figure stands up well. The plastic is a little gummy. It's a little bit soft, and I think over the years, some of these figures have a bit of a stickiness to them. They don't really stick, but they're not as smooth as they once were. They're not as fresh, I guess, as you can say. But still, we're looking at a figure that's 20 plus, 23 years old right now. That's pretty darn good. So that's Qui Gon Jinn from his second release. Okay, so next up for Qui Gon, we wouldn't have to wait long because right around the same time they made deluxe sets of the action figures as they were releasing the regular versions of them, and they made a deluxe set of Darth Maul, of Qui-Gon, and of Obi Wan, and they came with a small lightsaber roleplay toy that connected to the character, and it had some action figures to it. So we have that Qui-Gon as well because he is actually a slightly different action figure. That's him over here. So this is the deluxe version of Qui-Gon. He does come with his lightsaber as well there again. Completely different head sculpt again here. So you can see his hair flowing in the wind there. So he's in an action pose where he's fighting Darth Maul. Again, we can bring up the camera close. You can see that they've nicely painted the face again. The features are nice on the character. It's hard to believe this is already the third Qui-Gon we're going to have in just a matter of months. But it is. They've released a lot of different versions of toys. Now, these ones are a little bit interesting. I really like the Darth Maul version because I liked his stance, and I like that you could push the button on the back and have him holding his lightsaber horizontally or vertically or diagonally, which was nice. This one's kind of stuck in that pose. He's really fixed in a pose there. He has one leg back, one leg forward. If you take the lightsaber out of his hands and put his arms down, he's good for nothing. But in an action pose, he still works well. You can still have him in a nice battle scene with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan helping him out. So that's what he looks like holding his lightsaber blade there. Again, we're going to take it out and look at it in detail and go from there. So let's take his blade out. Again, both arms can grasp that nicely. No added articulation on the arms to move them out. You can just move them up and down. So you can see that there. They only go up and down. Just positioned to hold the lightsaber. His head does turn, so you can turn his head side to side. You can see his hair waving nicely to one side. Again, completely different head sculpt from the other two as far as the hair anyway. He's got a bit of a longer neck. As far as waist articulation, you can turn him side to side. You did hear a click because there is an action feature there. And if I move his arms up here, you'll see on the belt as we come down, there's a little indent on this side over here and a little indent on this side over here. And that's for that lightsaber to attach on and use the action feature, which we'll look at in one sec as well. So as far as the articulation down past the robe, again, he does have the slit on the side there where you can move his legs up a little bit, but you can't really do much. This one even more so than the other ones. It's more of a harder plastic. He's just fixed in that position. Same thing with the other leg, exactly the same thing. And you can see it's in a stance, an action stance, so he doesn't really stand forward either. Underneath, he does have his foot pegs, which is nice, so you can put him on a stand. It does say 1999, Hasbro China, Lucasfilm Limited, so that's the place where they were putting those stamps on these action figures. So that's what he looks like from the front. Okay, and then this is what he looks like, the deluxe version from the side. And as we get to the side, you're starting to see that there is an action feature on the back of this guy over here. And then that's what he looks like from the back. So you can see his hair flowing nicely. But immediately you see this thing over here on the back, and that's a button that gets pressed in when you put the lightsaber on. Or if you don't want to have a lightsaber on, you can press it in as well. And that gives it an action feature where he can swing side to side. Okay, so that's a nice little feature on there. We'll put the lightsaber blade in just to have a look at him. But that's what he looks like without it. Let's get that lightsaber back in his hand quickly so we don't spend too much time on the character. Okay, we got that back in his hand, and then there's that roleplay toy that he came with. And it's basically like a small lightsaber hilt. It's pretty neat. It does have a little blade that comes out. That's as far as it comes out, so it's a kid's toy. It's not an adult toy, in case you guys are wondering. Remember, these things are intended for kids. We just collect them because we're big kids. So it does have a button here on the front that does nothing, and then on the back here, it does have a larger button. This is the one that you press to do the action feature. So we'll bring that blade all the way in, side there. And then we're going to take our mighty Qui Gon. We're going to stick him onto this nice action feature here. Bear with me just for a sec. So here's Qui Gon attached to the lightsaber blade to give you that extra added action feature. And it sits nicely on there. It actually clips right into those little indents that I showed you just below his waist in action figure form. And then this whole part of the blade here spins. So you can have him spinning. You can have him doing flips, attacking Darth Maul if you're a kid, and he'll turn with you as you're playing. And then, of course, if you push that button on the back, that pushes that button that's in between his waist and the blade there. And when you press that, you're going to get the action feature. So let's bring it around the front to try and show you there. And you can see he does a lightsaber swing side to side. And you can see his hair swinging too. So it adds that nice little effect when he's fighting Darth Maul. So that's the deluxe version of Qui Gon that we got in episode 1. So next up, they continued on with the cinema scenes. They were making cinema scenes as part of the Power of the Force 2 line, where we got versions of characters that we couldn't sometimes get in the regular releases. And episode 1, they started doing that as well. In this case, it wasn't 3 characters we never had before. It was just a different version of Qui Gon. He came with Anakin and Darth Maul as well. And it was their Tatooine showdown. So when he was trying to run back with Anakin to the Naboo starship to try and get away, once they realized that they were in danger, Darth Maul came and attacked. And it's an awesome figure. Both Qui-Gon and the Darth Maul in this set are amazing. That's this figure over here. Again, it's 1999. We haven't changed years. This is all same year, just a few months different. I wasn't able to find this one up in Canada. I did have to go to comic book store or hobby shop to find this guy. But you can see he's in an action pose, but have a look at the detail. They've gotten so much better with the sculpting on these characters. They probably added that to a different design team. I love this character. I still have this set, 3 of them, with Anakin running away and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul fighting, sitting in front of my Royal Starship as a diorama. And just an amazing figure. Again, he's pre-sculpted. All of them were. He doesn't have much motion on here. We're going to look at how much he does have, but you can see with his leg stance that you're kind of limited to him just fighting Darth Maul, and that's okay because we have different versions of Qui-Gon. So head sculpt wise, we'll bring him up close there. So again, you can see a different head sculpt. He's got his mouth open here. He's basically screaming. Anakin drop as he's fighting Darth Maul, and we can see his hair flowing nicely in the back there. And they've always added that grayish brown, definition to the hair to give it nice depth, and it looks really, really good. I love it. It's got the poncho over. The poncho is removable, but why would you take it off? It's basically still the same action figure, and to take it off, you're probably going to have to damage it or damage the hair because you don't have removable heads on these characters. No ball joints there at the time yet. So that's what he looks like with lightsaber in hand. Let's take the lightsaber out of his hand so we can look at the character in a little more detail. Lightsaber is still exactly the same thing. That hasn't changed. But now we can look at articulation on the character here. So head can turn side to side slightly, again, as much as the poncho allows you to. The poncho flows nicely. You can see it's positioned in the wind. His arms here, up and down. You can turn him at the wrist here as well. Nothing on this one at the elbow. You're restricted there. The other one does go up and down. He doesn't have any motion at the wrist, but he does have it at the elbow. So you can turn him at the elbow over there. You can have him, telling somebody off as well. You can see the position that he's got his arm in. We'll lift his arms up there just so we can have a quick look under the robe. You can see there as well. You can see he's fully painted underneath there, so they haven't cheaped out there. You can turn him side to side, so he does have that articulation that hasn't gone away. As far as the leg comes through the bottom part of his Jedi robes, and again, they're plastic, so you can't really do much. There is articulation to them, so you can move them back and forth slightly on both sides, but you wouldn't really want to do much there other than just adjust his action pose with what you can do. So if we turn him up underneath there, we can see it does still say Hasbro China, and it does say 1999 LFL, Lucasfilm Limited, on that leg. No foot peg on this leg, just on this one over here, and that stands in the cinema scene because it comes with a nice plastic base of, Tatooine desert, and they all have their own area to stand in over there. So that was a nice feature. It's designed to be a showcase or a standalone set, but it's nice that it's still part of the 3 3/4 inch line. I always love that about the Star Wars figures. So that's what he looks like from the front. We turn him to the side. There you can see Qui-Gon from the side with the wind blowing. And then that's what he looks like from the back. And you can see the nice detail on the poncho. Why I love this thing is, have a look at it. They've painted the poncho and it's got a flap folded over this way, and this one's flowing in the wind. And the Darth Maul is exactly the same way. He's got such a nice flow to him. They're such nice sculpted characters. I love them. They're part of my favorite characters in the episode 1 line for sure. Even though I can't do much with them, they're not really action figures, but they're part of that line. So that's our Qui-Gon from the Tatooine Showdown. Okay, next up. Now, these ones aren't going in any particular order. They did all come out in 1999. I happened to find this one really late into 1999. This was part of the Theed hangar playset. So we find out that there's actually there's playsets made for episode 1. And there was a couple different Theed playsets. There's the one where they do the Jedi duel. It's like part of the area where they're standing, the 3 of them, Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi Wan, when they're going down the narrow passageways towards that power reactor or whatever it was, where he ends up having the final duel. But before they got there, when Darth Maul made his famous debut, they actually made a Theed hangar playset, which is awesome. And you can reenact the part where the doors open and Darth Maul comes out, and there's little areas for the characters to stand. And there's an action handle or a button that you can press, and it's the shape of a lightsaber again. And you connect your Qui-Gon figure that comes with a set, and you put batteries in it, and when you push the button down, your Qui-Gon figure swings around and chops up battle droids that come with the set and knocks over things that are in the environment as well, like boxes. And again, we get another brand new Qui Gon Jinn action figure. So that's this guy over here. So again, he's in a position here in a pose, scene specific. Again, he's sculpted in a way where you can only use him for that pose, but you can see that he's got a brand new head sculpt again. Let's bring that head forward so you can see the hair is in a different position. Fully painted as well, so again, I have no qualms or issues with that there. It's a brand new Qui-Gon. I wanted it more for the playset, but it was nice to get a figure with that playset as a pack-in as well and not get charged more. We turn it around, we can see the sculpting on the head from the side with the hair flowing action-wise, and that's what it looks like from the back as well in the hair. So again, another Qui-Gon Jinn, we're still in 1999. So lightsaber in hand, we're going to take that out just to have a look at him in more detail. So again, bear with me for 1 sec. Okay, so here's the Qui-Gon from the Theed Hangar playset without the lightsaber in hand. And you notice he has lots of loose joints over here, not because I was playing with the action figure, but because he's positioned this way. Once you put him onto that foot stand on the playset and use the action feature, and you push the button, they swing around. His arms swing around with his blade, and he knocks over his battle droids, cuts them in half, knocks over boxes in the environment. So his arms are very loose, and his one leg is very loose for that reason too, because he does that Jedi leg kick. So that's the reason why that figure has that action feature. Other one is fixed. It does move up and down slightly, the leg does, but that one's designed for him to stand nicely. And he does stand nicely in that playset. So you can have him attacking, Darth Maul with your Obi Wan figure, okay, and battle droids. So articulation-wise, his head does move side to side. We can see we do have a nice head sculpt there with the hair flowing. Okay, we looked at that already. As far as waist articulation here, he does turn side to side. Again, he's loose there. He's designed to be in an action feature completely. This leg swings up and down. There's not much to that there. You can see they've cut the robe, bottom part of his Jedi robe, so it's not in the way, so you can use that action feature. And it doesn't change anything about the look of the character. It doesn't stand out like he's standing in his underwear. It actually looks like he's in an action pose there, so that's fine. As far as articulation, down underneath the legs, there's nothing at the knees. This leg just swings up. This one's got a tiny bit of articulation there, and then underneath we can see he does have foot pegs on both feet, which is neat. And it does still say 1999 Lucasfilm Limited and Hasbro China underneath there. So that's Qui-Gon from the front, from the Theed Hangar playset. That's what he looks like from the side with his hair flowing, and then that's what he looks like from the back as well. So you can see that belt is nicely painted on there, and that's the Qui-Gon we got, still in 1999. Okay, next up is another 1999 figure, and it's the 6th one of Qui-Gon that we're going to have still in the same calendar year. Okay, so this one came with a creature set. It came with an OP, and the OP is basically a sea creature. It's supposed to be a smaller version of the one that attacked them when they were in the submarine, the Naboo submarine, the Gungan submarine, traveling underneath to try and get to the palace in Theed to save Queen Amidala when he finally got Boss Nos to agree with him. And this fish was attacking him underwater, and that OP is supposed to be a smaller version of that. It's actually a nicely detailed creature. I like that creature. But it came with a brand new Qui-Gon Jinn pack-in figure. So that's this guy over here. And he does have his robes on. Interesting, they went underwater with their robes on, but they do have the Jedi apparatus in their mouth. So this one is scene specific again as well. You can see a nicely painted brand new Qui-Gon Jinn as well, to have him, swimming underwater. So that apparatus they put in their mouth, they use to breathe, and so they can breathe longer underwater because they have to go swim down pretty deep to that secret underwater Gungan fortress or city. He does come with this long staff, so I don't know if this is just an action feature or if this was supposed to be some sort of an idea for a deleted scene to attack any creatures under the water. But he does come with a very unique weapon, which is nice as well to have something unique at the time. That's pretty much it. It's just in a black color, but it's a nice new bit of staff there. And then as far as the figure himself, he does have, of course, his lightsaber on his belt here as well. So they've added that now. They've given that realism to the characters going forward. And that's what Qui-Gon looks like from the front there. Articulation-wise, you can turn his head side to side. He does have nice motion there. He does have that robe hanging over his under part of his Jedi outfit, but again, restricted. You can't take it off because you have a much different arm coloring over there because he has the robes going over his arms as well. So arm articulation, they go up and down. Nothing here at the wrists, okay? On this hand, this one's more in a position like he's swimming, so he's got his arm out like that. You can move that arm up and down as well. As far as the waist, you can still turn him side to side, so you have waist articulation. I just don't want to lose his lightsaber hilt there. I just kind of got in the way a little bit with turning him side to side. So that's what he looks like from the front. As far as legs, they do go up. You can see there is a slit there on the back, on the side there, so you can only move it up so much. Nothing at the knees, but they've added some cool new articulation on this character, and it's actually the reason why I wanted to get him at the time. I wasn't impressed enough with the way he looked here because he had that breathing apparatus. But then I studied it a little more closely and I find out he's got ankle articulation. Check this out. That's a first for Star Wars figures at the time. So you can put his ankle straight down to have him swimming. It's kind of hard to see there in the light, but you can point his feet both down like he's swimming in the water, which is awesome. And I saw that there. I'm like, yeah, that's enough for me to want to buy it. And then you can put that arm up like he's swimming, and you can put that staff in that hand, and he's either Superman or he's swimming over to the Gungan underwater city. So that's what he looks like from the front, Qui-Gon does. And then underneath there, he does still have foot pegs, even though he does have that ankle articulation. Does say 1999, Hasbro China. So that's front view. That's what he looks like from the side. And then that's what he looks like from the back. And from the back, you can see his hair hanging over the back part of his robe. And he does have his hood underneath the hair there, and nice sculpting on there as well. It's a softer plastic. So that's what we got with the Opie Creature Pack, Qui-Gon, also in 1999. So now the line would get over from 1999 into 2000, and a lot of the figures never saw their release, especially if it was stuff that came out later in the line. It's not a new thing now where you can't find stuff in the stores. You had trouble finding stuff in the stores then, and the online distribution wasn't anywhere near as good as it is right now. So if you missed it, it was very, very hard to get it. And then there was another Qui-Gon that came out, and because the pegs were still full of older product, because they made so much of it, the rest of the stuff wasn't picked up from retailers, and a lot of it sat in warehouses. And there was an episode 1 Jedi Master Qui-Gon that came with soft goods. I never actually picked this one up. I picked up the Darth Maul. I picked up the Obi-Wan because the Obi-Wan had a nice real hair Jedi braid on him that I liked on that figure. And the Darth Maul, I mean, who doesn't like Darth Maul? His pose wasn't very good. They were in action poses still, but we'll throw a picture up with the Qui-Gon on screen. You can see he does have soft goods. But it is another version of him that did come out. It's actually version number 7 already of the character, but that was also part of the Comtech line, and but it came out in 2000. So same thing in 2000, they made these specific holographic versions of characters as well. They're not really action figures, but they do kind of fall in the action figure line, so I'm going to bring it up. There were 2 that were released, and because they didn't perform well, they never made any more, and we never even saw these ones up in Canada. So there was a holographic Qui Gon Jinn that came with a stand, and then there was a holographic Darth Maul as well. They had a little light up feature where the stand makes the figure light up, and you can see the translucent look through them like they're a hologram. They're in 3¾ inch scale, so they still fit the line. We'll throw a picture up with the Qui-Gon, of course, so you can see him there. But that's what we got also in 2000, and that because they didn't perform well, they never really continued the holographic figures beyond Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. Now, there was another release of Episode 1 Creature Set in 2000. It was still part of the Episode 1 line. This time it was Qui-Gon with the Opie. So not the Opie, but Eopie, the one that you see Obi-Wan riding in the new Obi-Wan series, and the one that you saw Qui-Gon riding on in that past gas in front of Jar Jar before the pod race. It's a great creature. The creature itself, we're going to look at that in a second. It's such a nice set, but because, again, there's so much product on the shelves, this stuff never even came out in North America. It came out, I think basically it came out in Europe. It came out in the UK, it came out in Europe because there was so much product here, the retailers wouldn't even pick it up. So we would get a version of it years later, but that was released. We're going to throw a picture up of the Qui-Gon, and that's, again, another version of Qui-Gon, and he's designed to sit on that Eopie, and that him and that Eopie can ride through the deserts of Tatooine looking for Anakin Skywalker. Now, Okay, so the next time that we'd see Qui-Gon would be in 2000 as well. And now we'd finish off the episode 1 line, and they merged all the Star Wars movies together into one line called Power of the Jedi. And with Power of the Jedi, they put everything under one logo and made new versions of characters. And we got another Qui-Gon Jinn in this line. It's one of my favorites as well. So that's this one over here. They made him with a soft goods poncho, which is awesome. Now, this figure takes some parts from the Qui-Gon that came with that Eopie, because he was designed to sit on him, mainly his legs. The rest of the figure is pretty much new. But as far as the legs, some of the parts are from that set. And we got a new head, we got a new sculpt on there. And of course, we got soft goods, which is nice as opposed to plastic. And you can see how nicely it sits on the Qui-Gon. He didn't have many different costume changes like the other characters did. He basically had his Jedi robes, non-Jedi robes, just the inner Jedi robes, and then of course him in the poncho here when he was in disguise looking for ways to fix that Naboo starship and then stumbling upon Anakin Skywalker. So that's what we got in the Power of the Jedi line. He does have a lightsaber as well there in hand. We'll take the lightsaber out. We'll look at the character in some detail. So let's have a look at him from the front with that poncho on, and then that's what he looks like underneath with the foot pegs. Lucasfilm Limited 2000. Hasbro China, so you can see we're moving up in the years. And then that's what he looks like from the side with the robe on. And then that's what he looks like from the back with the robe on. So that's what the Qui-Gon looks like with the robe on. If we want to look at him underneath here, we're going to have to try and take the robe off. So here's the Qui-Gon without the robe on. You can see he does have an action stance, but he has some added articulation, so you can use him in more than one form. His arms are oddly a little bit, his hands in particular, a little bit big, but still, he's worked out, I guess, while he's been on Tatooine. He does have added articulation here. We'll look at that in a sec. So his head does turn slightly side to side. He's basically designed for you to have that robe on, but you can take it off. And they've added ball joint swivels here at the shoulders, which is awesome. So you can have full movement with Qui-Gon there, a lot more than you normally could. Up and down, side to side. Nothing here at the elbows and nothing at the wrists. But again, we have that extra movement there. The top of his shoulders of his robe here, they get in the way. You can't really move his arm all the way up. But you have a lot of motion on there. And you can have him opening his hand and talking to Watto and gambling and using the Force. Or trying to use the Force on Watto when he finds out he can't. So that's what Qui-Gon looks like without his robe on. Of course, he has that articulation there at the waist. You can turn him side to side. Legs here, they can move up, but again, he's got that slit, and they haven't started doing any soft goods on these characters yet, so he can't really sit down or do anything beyond just stand there. And there was the legs I was talking about from the one that came with a Eopie that was designed to sit on the Eopie. So this Qui-Gon could, I guess, if you wanted to, sit on that Eopie, but he does have that hard plastic there getting in the way. So that's what it looks like from the front, from the side, and then from the back without the robe on, without his poncho on. So that's our Qui-Gon from the Power of the Jedi in 2000. So we'd have to wait 1 year, and we'd go up to 2001. We're still part of the Power of the Jedi line, but we get another version of Qui-Gon Jinn, a brand new one called Jedi Training Gear. Now, this is an interesting one because it's an expanded universe version of Qui-Gon. They made a version of Qui-Gon and then a couple versions of Obi Wan as well, where they're training, or he's training Obi Wan to be a Jedi. So we get a new version of Qui-Gon. We'll bring that forward here. That's a nice, refreshing part to the line. We never had Qui-Gon basically in any other robes or outfits from the movies or from any other part of the lore in Star Wars than this figure over here. And it's a favorite of mine. He's in an action stance, but he looks really, really good. It still looks like Qui-Gon. He looks a little younger than the one that we saw in episode 1, but we get a brand new version of Qui-Gon, and he's got his lightsaber in hand there, and that's what he looks like holding it. Let's just take that lightsaber out of his hand. So as far as articulation on this character, let's have a look at the head sculpt first so we can see Qui-Gon up close. His hair is nice and clean. You can see that he's basically training maybe at the Jedi Temple with Obi-Wan. So he's got a nice flow to his hair there, a nice face sculpt. He does have nice paint job here on his outfit. I've never seen him wear that outfit. Maybe that's from a comic book or a concept design that they were thinking of doing, because they did actually do a concept version of Darth Maul as well. So that might be where these things came from. So as far as articulation of the head, slight movement side to side. You can't really move him much because of the top part of his outfit there, the collar. Arms do go up to about there. Again, the shoulder pads stop it from going any further. He doesn't have any articulation here at the elbows or the wrists. And same thing for the other one. The other one kind of positions to hold that lightsaber a little bit better when it's not in the way. So I prefer to have the lightsaber in that hand. You can turn him side to side, so you have that motion there. And you can see that his robe has like almost like a separate piece protruding down over here. But it does give him the ability to sit, so he can bring his legs up. Finally, Qui-Gon can sit. In this version anyway. He's in an action pose. His legs again are fixed. This one's kind of positioned to the side. This one's positioned forward. Nice little buckles painted on them there as well. So that's what Qui-Gon looks like from the front in his Jedi Master training gear. And then that's what he looks like underneath. And you can see he does have his foot pegs, and it does say 2000 Lucasfilm Limited, Hasbro China on the other foot. And then that's what he looks like from the side. And then that's what he looks like from the back as well. And you can see they've painted that belt all the way around. And there's nice little definition to his color here with the gray and the black. And they're different pieces. So nice sculpting going on some of these figures. And that's like an imagining of Qui-Gon when he's training Obi-Wan. So that's what we got from the Power of the Jedi line, 2001. Okay, so we jump 1 year to 2002. And Power of the Jedi goes away because they had that for about just under 2 years, and then they made a Star Wars Saga line, which again where they merge everything together as they got ready for Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So I can remember when this character of this version of Qui-Gon came out, there was a rumor that somehow he'd be in the movie, or they'd be in some sort of a scene in the movie, and that's why they made a figure of him. Of course, after watching the movie, that wasn't true, but rumors are always so good. One of the things I did find out about Qui-Gon, which I didn't know prior to Episode 2, I had the fortune of going down to Indianapolis for Celebration 2 with my wife, who was pregnant with my daughter at the time. So I was super excited. I never attended any sort of Star Wars event. I've never attended any kind of a toy expo or anything at the time. Those were non-existent over here that I knew about anyway, in Canada. So we drove down to Indianapolis to spend the weekend over there, and talking to many different Star Wars fans, meeting many friends over there as well, while sitting and waiting for some of these interviews or shows to take place. I had the fortune of sitting with a couple of guys that were telling me about the novel. They had read it for Episode 2. This is before Attack of the Clones came out. And I, of course, hadn't seen the movie or hadn't read anything. I didn't want to spoil anything, and they didn't want to spoil anything for me, but they did tell me one thing that I was fascinated about. They told me that there was a bloodline with the Jedis. So not so much a bloodline as in descendants, like in blood, but who trained who. And through talking, I found it fascinating that you have Anakin Skywalker and his Jedi Master is Obi-Wan, and then you had Obi-Wan and his Jedi Master is Qui-Gon, and then we find out that Count Dooku is Qui-Gon's Jedi Master. And then in Attack of the Clones, of course, we find out that Yoda is Count Dooku's Jedi Master. So all these little things that trickle down the way George Lucas did them were very fascinating to me, and it showed why these characters were so powerful. It's almost like the next iteration or the next version of them that came through the bloodline became stronger and stronger and stronger. And you can argue that Obi-Wan wasn't strong, but Obi-Wan had an aspect to him that it's almost like a force skill of luck that he could get out of any situation. And then the more we see Count Dooku, the more we learned about him over the years, you kind of see that Qui-Gon resembles him with that rebellious attitude. He didn't really believe in all the things the Jedis were saying was true, but he was 100% convinced that Anakin was the chosen one. So we get a new version. We'll get back on track of Qui-Gon in that Saga line. And with the Saga line, they went with everything action posed. Like when I say everything, I mean every single figure came with either an action feature or an action pose. But because it was a new character, if you're someone like me that gave in very easily to action figures, you had to buy it. So that's this guy over here. So that's Qui-Gon from the Star Wars Saga line. Now you can see he's designed just to do one thing, and that's just fight with his lightsaber. And he's stuck in that pose. I mean, the Jedi robes are a separate piece, so they flow nicely over there. But his hand positioning, his hair flowing, his stance, he's stuck in that one pose. You can't do anything else with this action figure. He's probably one of the most boring releases, I think, of any Qui-Gon that we've had to date. Even that one that came with the Theed hangar playset, or the one that came with a lightsaber, the deluxe one, has more playability than this guy over here. He's just kind of stuck like a statue. He might as well just came out as a statue or a little figurine. So that's what he looks like holding his lightsaber there. We'll take the lightsaber out of his hand so we can look at articulation on this guy. His arms do move up for whatever reason. They do go up. You can put them out of the way. Again, you don't want to take these robes off, because if you do, then you're not going to have a nice aesthetically pleasing looking figure, because the arms have the robes on, but the bottom dart doesn't. So if, you know what would have been nice is if they did this, that they gave you a separate set of arms to pull off and put on, so you can have two different outfits for the characters, but that would probably cost too much at the time as well. So you can see while we have the arms up in that position that he does have articulation there at the waist. You can turn him, even though there's not really any point to turning him. As far as the legs here underneath, he doesn't have any slits, so he doesn't even have that design feature to try and move the legs up. Even though there is articulation on them, they could have just put him with a solid piece of plastic there, so he doesn't have to move around. So the arms do come down. Articulation on the arms there. He does have articulation at the wrist. He does have articulation at the elbow there as well, so it does swivel on both sides, so you can swivel the elbows there. And of course, he does have that motion there at the top of the shoulders. But that's pretty much it. His arms aren't going to go down any further than that. His head can turn side to side. The head sculpt is nice. He does have his, again, a hairpiece over the front, the other hairpiece hanging over the back, and of course his robe there as well. So that's what he looks like from the front. Underneath there, we can see he does have his foot peg still, and it does say 2002, Lucasfilm Limited, Hasbro China. And then that's what he looks like from the side with his robes there in his position. And then that's what it looks like from the back. So again, a lot of this stuff could have been corrected if they just gave us soft goods, but they decided they were going to release this Qui-Gon. If I remember correctly, many years ago, this was an unreleased figure that was going to come in another set. And because they had so many different sets and stuff that was sitting in the stores that they couldn't release, they decided to release him as part of the Saga line. I think he was supposed to be a part of another set, or maybe part of the episode 1 line, or part of some action figure playset. But we got him as a main figure in the main line, and that's the Qui Gon Jinn. And no, he wasn't in Attack of the Clones like everybody was saying when the action figure came out. But that's what we got for the Star Wars Saga line. So we jump forward a number of years now. We go from 2002 to 2008 before we get another version of Qui-Gon. And in that time, Hasbro got really good with their action figures. They got them into super articulated form, particularly after the Revenge of the Sith lines, when they started releasing the stuff in Saga, and then in the 30th anniversary collection. And then in 2008, as part of that anniversary collection, we got an Evolution set. Again, premium versions of action figures. This one was called Jedi Legacy, and it came with Qui-Gon Jinn, Bolter Swan, who was a female character from Attack of the Clones and also the comics, but she was in the arena, and a new Jedi Order, so a comic version, a future version of Luke Skywalker. So it was a 3-pack, but to our delight, we got a brand new Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's this figure over here. Now, this figure is the definitive version of Qui-Gon. We're going to look at him in detail right now, and a favorite of mine. So one thing that we noticed right away on this character here is they managed to get Qui-Gon, his proportions, his height and everything good now. So a lot of the characters in Star Wars, they were all over the place, particularly like Chewbacca compared to Princess Leia. There wasn't this huge height difference, and as they got forward with the lines, they were able to fix the proportions of the characters and get the heights done properly, and Qui-Gon was able to get a definitive version of himself here. And so here he is in full articulation form here. You can see how great he looks. He's got that nice long neck like the actor had, like the character has, of course. One thing I guess that's a gripe of mine about this release is just that his robes they're a little bit pale. I would have liked if they're a little bit more tan like the versions over here. Maybe not as tan as this one over here, but somewhere in between that look would have been nice. But again, to get a definitive version of Qui-Gon was a joy for me as well. So again, he has his lightsaber in his hand there. We're going to remove that out of his hand so we can look at him in detail. As far as the head, if we bring that up close, you can see they have him a pretty good likeness of Liam Neeson. Maybe the biggest gripe is I'm not really crazy with the hair standing over the front. It would have been nice to have a different version with the hair flowing or or hanging over the back. We've seen better versions, so that's definitely one of the gripes that I have with this character. That's what he looks like from the side as well with his hair, and then if we look around the back, you can see he's got a weathered look, and his head has seen better sculpts from some of the previous versions that we've had. And I think what they're trying to do here is the fact that he's got a longer neck to try and get the character image right. They've probably have the hair flowing over the front to try and hide some of that, because maybe it's not going to look proper if you see his neck to his shoulder, it's going to be a little bit misproportioned. So that's probably part of the reason why the hair is sitting that way. The head is on a ball joint, so that does go back and forth, up and down as well. It does pop off if need be. As far as arm articulation, it does have, swivels here at the, ball joints here at the shoulders. So you can't move his arm. You have full articulation there. Nothing gets in the way, so you can go all the way up nicely with him there, all the way around. He does have swivel there at the ball joints at the elbows, my bad. Okay, that folds in and out. And then, of course, articulation here at the wrist as well. You can turn that back and forth. So full articulation on Qui-Gon on both sides there. As far as articulation here at the waist, look at this. You can sway him side to side. You can go forward. You can go back. Look how good that articulation is on the character. Full motion there on the Qui-Gon. I love what they did there. I love how they've done the robes here. I find that it flows nicely. Nothing looks misproportioned to me than the way you'd want it to be for a character if you want to have him in motion or action poses fighting Darth Maul. And then, of course, we're finally getting better here. Someone's listening. So we have some soft goods here on the bottom on his robe. A very, very soft, but plastic. But then we have soft goods here on the side. So you can see that's not changing the look of the character. It flows in nicely, and as a result, you can have this guy sitting. So if I move his legs up, you can have him sit, which you couldn't do with these characters in the past. So that's a nice detail they've added to the character. As far as the legs, he doesn't have anything here at the hips, so there's no ball joint there at the hips on the character. That's maybe one thing that they could add. But you can move his leg all the way up, and you do have articulation there at the knee, which is a first for Qui-Gon as well. And of course, you have it there at the ankle too. So you can move that ankle slightly up and down, and you can turn it side to side. So full articulation on this guy over here. And a welcome and ultimate sculpt for Qui-Gon Jinn. And he has been for many, many years. So that's what Qui-Gon looks like from the front. And if then we flip him up underneath there, we can see he does have his foot pegs, and it does say the year he was made. I believe it says 2008. It's really hard to read. It's tiny, but he does have the foot pegs there, so you can put him on a stand. So that's the look from the front. Let's turn him to the side so you can see what it looks like from the side. And of course, mine's slanted a bit. You can fix that pose to have him standing straight. So you can have him standing like that. And then we turn around to the back, and that's what Qui-Gon looks like from the back as well. So that's our Qui-Gon from the Evolution set. And that has become the ultimate version of our Qui-Gon to date, 2008. Okay, so we're going to jump 1 year. We're going to go to 2009. And now we have the Legacy Collection. So Legacy Collection comes out. We have some figures come out. There's a lot of demand for stuff that we weren't able to get from the past. And, the Hasbro team was very accommodating to the fans. We had a lot of characters made that probably would never see the light of day. A lot of background Cantina aliens, a lot of characters, a lot of robots, Build-A-Droid figure parts that were coming. They listened to the fans, and they gave us a lot of stuff because there wasn't any more Star Wars multimedia. There was the Clone Wars, but there wasn't any more motion pictures. George said he was done with those at the time. So they had to find other ways of keeping that line going. So there was always this demand to get that EOP that Qui-Gon was released in episode 1 with, that we saw him in the movie with, because he had some good screen time with it. And Hasbro decided to try and find a way to release it. So they had a mail away that they had for that figure. You'd mail away, I think it was $6 in proofs of purchase with the figures that you bought. And then you sent that in. Hasbro sent you a Qui-Gon Jinn with an EOP. Now, the Qui-Gon Jinn is basically the Evolution's Qui-Gon, but again, this time with a poncho. So let's bring him forward over here. It is a brand new Qui-Gon. I want to show you the Qui-Gon. I'll show you the EOP as well. So you can see that it's basically the exact same figure that we just looked at on the Evolution set. He has a much better paint job. He's not as pale looking as the other one did. We can bring up his head close just to show you. So they've fixed the head sculpt this way, and they've added that poncho on him as well. So he has a slightly different look and accessories, of course, than the previous one does. And then we can see how he looks like from the side there with that head sculpt. It's exactly the same head sculpt. And then from the back. Now the poncho is a different poncho than the one that came in the Power of the Jedi line. You can tell right away if you look at the Power of the Jedi line one over there and this one here, they're a different color. Slightly different material, but you can see the pattern here on the front is done differently. It's in a different color and it's done differently as well than the previous one was. And it's in a lighter brown color. So we're going to take his lightsaber out of his hand just to have a look at him in a little more detail. Qui Gon. So again, exactly the same figure. We will notice here at the bottom that his boots do have a slight discoloration to show that he's walking in the sands of Tatooine. So he's got a weathered look to him. And then we're going to pull that poncho off to look at the figure underneath. Bear with me one sec. So here's the Qui-Gon without the robe on. So he's got a much better skin tone to him than that previous one from the Evolutions line. They just bring him forward here just to show you comparison side by side. So you can see he's a lot paler. He wasn't feeling as good on the Evolutions line than he is here. So they fixed that skin tone part. The outfit's still a little bit light, but I guess you can say it's screen accurate. It's better than it being too tan. But I love the skin tones on this one a lot better. And thankfully, taking that poncho off on this was a lot easier. It's a good thing you can't see some stuff. I turned the camera off. You don't have to hear the cuss words. But taking the poncho off because his head is on a ball is a lot easier than taking the poncho off on that Power of the Jedi one and not trying to ruin it. But the things we do for our reviews. But we want to see what he looks like underneath. So that's the Qui-Gon that we got with the Eope. Okay. And he does, have, again, same articulation as that Evolutions one. It's exactly the same figure. Just with a slightly modded paint job. And, of course, the weathering on the boots there. Now, as far as the Eope, we're going to bring him forward here because some people haven't had a chance to see him. But you're very familiar with him from Episode 1. And now you're familiar with him from, I guess, the end of Episode 3 as well, but familiar with him from the Obi Wan series. So not much as far as articulation here. They kind of changed the paint job a little bit from his original release. His legs just go back and forth, but Qui-Gon sits nicely there on top. And then that's his face there. You can see his head there at the front. You do have some articulation there at the head to move him back and forth. But that is our Eope, and that was a mail away with Qui-Gon for the people that weren't able to get him initially. Hasbro helped out and released him. You wonder if we're going to get a re-release of that creature now that he appeared in Obi-Wan. I wouldn't hold our breath. Just because everything's become so expensive these days, I don't think that that's going to be a high demand figure coming out. So that's the Qui-Gon mail-away. Okay, so then we jump to 2012, and then they've decided to release the Phantom Menace in 3D, and this basically just happened before Disney's acquisition of Star Wars from George Lucas and Lucasfilm. And they made a line of figures to coincide with the release of the Episode 1 in 3D, and we got a new version of Qui-Gon as a result. And it's a Qui-Gon with a light-up lightsaber. So we'll bring him forward. And again, they've gone with some figures that have action features, and this is how we got our new Qui-Gon, with an action feature. So, I mean, right off the bat, you're going to notice that he's got a lightsaber in his hand that's not rulable, and that's going to make it a little less desirable as an action figure. I got mine, I guess you can say, a few years later on clearance, but I had to pick him up because I did love the head sculpt on this one. So I'm just going to bring that close just to show you. Look how far they've come with the head sculpts. Look how much better this head sculpt is than the ones we've gotten previously as part of the Evolution set, and of course with the one that's with the mail-away with that Eope. So you can see a very, very good rendition of Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn with the hair sitting much more accurately in front, and he's got his ears fully sculpted there and a really nice face expression, and you can see how his hair flows all the way around. He does have that braid holding the hair in the back there. So sculpting wise, phenomenal on the head here. The head is on a ball, so that does move back and forth, up and down slightly. And then as far as articulation on the arms, you can only move the arms up and down. And you can see that he does have a lightsaber in that one arm that's fixed in there. That's not coming out. And of course, the other arm over here does go up and down, but it strangely has articulation at the elbow. So you do have a ball joint there at the elbow to move the arm in and out, up and down. And of course, you can turn his wrist on that hand as well, but there's not much you can do with that hand when the other one is fixed. As far as waist articulation on this character, No movement at the waist, and we'll see why that is in a second here. But again, we can see that his robe is sculpted. It does come off. You can take this bottom part of the robe off, but that's not going to look good, so you want to keep that on. But that is a piece that is removable that was probably put on because this figure has an action feature that lights up. So let's just bring that back over. I think I just ruined it a little bit there. Let's bring that back over there. Have it sitting properly. As far as leg articulation, again, he does have a slit there on the back of the leg, so you can move his leg up if you needed to, just that much without this coming off. But again, knee articulation on this guy as well. You can see I'm turning on the lightsaber while trying to bend the knee, but we'll look at that in a sec. So you have a ball joint there at the knee, or you can turn that leg back and forth. Nothing at the ankle, but again, articulation, some of it anyway at the leg there. And then same thing with that leg as well. So action feature wise on this character, his lightsaber does light up, and they haven't put any kind of a button on the back that gets in the way. They've integrated that into the belt that runs around the front, so it doesn't get in the way on the character. But again, it's very, very limited and disappointing that they put his arm this way and don't give you an option to have a regular arm there. But if you push that button there on the belt, you can see his lightsaber lights up nice and green. So it's a nice little play feature to play with this guy over here, so the kids can play and have a nice little battle with Qui-Gon. So there's a nice little light up. As far as taking that battery out, I don't think there's a way to take it out. I was looking at taking this thing off here to see whether there's a way to pull that battery out. I don't think there is. I think the battery is a one and done thing. If it dies, there's no way to change it. And if you change it, you're probably going to damage the figure. So the battery's either inside here or it's inside the arm somewhere. I'm guessing inside the body part there, and that's why you can't turn him at the waist. So let's put his robe back on so that Qui-Gon's not sitting naked in front of us over here, and then we're going to look at him in full detail. So that's what he looks like from the front. And underneath here, we can see he does have his foot pegs. It's difficult to read what it says underneath there. I believe it does say 2011 Lucasfilm Limited on the 1 foot. So 2 foot pegs there. That's what he looks like from the side. And then that's what he looks like from the back as well. So that's our Qui-Gon from the Phantom Menace 3D line that we received in 2012. So that's basically the newest sculpt that we've gotten from the Qui-Gon in that series. Okay, so also in 2012, around the same time, Qui-Gon would get released on a vintage collection, card back as well. We'll throw a picture up there. It is the Evolution sculpt, so it is that figure that we've looked at in detail already. This one over here. So they've taken this figure and they've put his robes on and they've packed him in on a vintage collection card. Unfortunately, I never picked that version up just because I had him loose, and I had him loose with the Opie, and I was a little bit cash strapped at the time. I decided not to get him. I regret it now, especially when I'm in the, I guess you can say, in the habit of the hobby where I like to have something carded as well. I love those vintage collection figures, and maybe we'll get lucky and that one will get re-released. He does deserve an upgrade. Body proportion wise, he's perfect. He only needs to have, ball joints there at the waist, at his hips, so that you can have full leg motion. They could add that to the tooling to make this figure perfect, and of course add a new head sculpt. Now, in case anybody was wondering or wanted to ask me, saying, you know what, you'd mentioned that head sculpt on the Phantom Menace 3D version was better than anyone we've seen yet, and it was on a ball joint. Is there any chance you can take that head off and put it on the Evolutions figure? Well, let's take it off and have a look. Okay, the answer is yes and no. You can see how much better Qui-Gon looks with that head sculpt on this head over here. It actually goes perfect. If they were able to get this head sculpt on that Qui-Gon Jinn body, we have our definitive Qui-Gon Jinn. I was able to get the head on, but the hole on the underneath of the head is a little bit tighter than the neck that you stick it on this Qui-Gon over here, and as a result, it can't sit fully on there. Like, it doesn't really give you full motion to go back and forth. It's very tight. I could technically drill it out, but then I'm not going to be able to get it back onto my Phantom Menace Evolutions Qui-Gon, and I don't want to do that. But you can see there's a nice little Easter egg where you can put that on your Qui-Gon and you have a definitive Qui-Gon Jinn, in case anybody hasn't tried it. That's what you could do to get a definitive Qui-Gon, and then not wait for Hasbro to release one. So that does it for our 3 3/4 inch review. Let's have a look at Black Series. So we're going to finish off our Qui Gon review with a look at the Black Series release. So in 2017, on the black and red box style art, we finally got a Qui Gon Jinn. That's this version over here. And we got an amazing looking Qui Gon Jinn in 6-inch form. So I'm a big fan. I was really happy that they started making prequel figures in the 6-inch line. And the Qui Gon Jinn is probably one of the first figures that has a very, very different looking head sculpt. It almost looks like the eye pieces, the eyes are a separate sculpt from the rest of the body on there. And you can have a look at it. You can see they're almost like they're underneath the face. And as a result, I'm maybe holding it a little bit too low there, but as a result, you can see how good that head sculpt came out on this Qui-Gon. And this Qui-Gon was slept on initially, and many people never got him. And then, of course, the regret came afterwards once the demand for the prequel stuff and once the figure. It's amazing when something's not in store anymore, how popular it becomes. So he's fully articulated. There he is on a ball. He does have movement. You can't move the head up and down. So you do have that motion there with the Qui-Gon. His hair is sculpted to sit over the front and over the back. They could basically just take this figure and shrink him down, and we'd have a perfect 3¾ inch version of Qui-Gon as well. So articulation here at the shoulders. Of course, you do have that full motion there with the ball joint on the shoulder to move it all the way around. You have it at the luxury of having that at the elbow as well for the figure. And of course, you can move his wrist, and does have articulation there at the wrist as well to turn that slightly forward or back for the Qui-Gon. Now, he did come with an additional hand as well, so he can use the Force, try to use it on Watto, but articulation-wise, that's how he works on both sides. He does have articulation here at the waist, so you can turn him back and forth. He has a little bit of movement up and down, a tiny bit, but not much, just mainly back and forth there. He does have a slot or a socket there on his belt to put his lightsaber hilt, so you can take out the blade part of the lightsaber and stick the hilt right on there. It would have been nice to have, the figure with a lit hilt and an unlit hilt. It would have been much easier, Hasbro, than having me to take this apart and I can only position him or have him standing one way. So that's Qui-Gon from the waist up. Let's have a look at him from the waist down over here. You can see he does have a slit here on the side of his robe, so you can move his legs up and down. His legs are on a ball, so you can move that leg in full motion. You can have him kicking, attacking. You can move him forward, backward. It's a nice soft plastic there. It would have been nice if there was some soft goods here. Then you can have him sitting, but we can't complain about everything. Of course, you can bend his knee there. I just lost his lightsaber. You can bend him there at the knee. And then, of course, he has articulation there at the ankle as well, up and down. And, of course, he has those rocker ankles that I love to talk about so much in 6-inch form. So that makes an ultimate version of Qui-Gon. As far as the figure from the front, that's what he looks like. Hold him forward. And then underneath, we can see he does have his foot pegs there. And as far as date, let's see if I can make it out. I can't make out the date on there on the bottom. It's a little bit faint on the figure, but he does have the foot pegs. So that's him from the front. That's him from the side. And that's Qui-Gon from the back. And you can see the nice weathered look on the character and paint job on this figure. So he's a favorite of mine. Love the character. Love to have him in both 3¾ inch and 6-inch. So that's Qui-Gon Jinn. So Qui-Gon was released one more time, this time in 2021 as part of the Lucasfilm 50th anniversary line of figures. So you can see they have him here on an Episode 1 card back. They'd had a few figures, Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, that came out at, I believe it was San Diego Comic-Con. And then this one came out later as a Best Buy exclusive. You could get a Qui-Gon, you could get a Jar Jar Binks, and you can get a Mace Windu as well. You can see it says 50th Lucasfilm. So it's exactly the same figure we looked at. They've improved the skin tone, so he's not as pale. He's got more of a skin tone complexion, but it's exactly the same character. And he is missing that extra hand that the other release had. I don't know why they omitted that on this release, but they did. But he does have his lightsaber there, and you can see he looks great in package. And they have adjusted the head sculpt a little bit. The eyes are a little bit different. They're using that scan technology, so it looks a little bit more like Liam Neeson than the other one did. And the other one's a little bit more cartoony now when you try and put them side by side. So it might be worthwhile to pick up both of them. But I definitely like this version with the separate set of eyes here, the loose one that I have here. I can't do it justice. You have to see him in person, in hand, to know exactly what I'm talking about. So, but that's our Qui Gon Jinn. And again, it's that reminiscent episode 1 packaging. So they've done that there. And you can see his nice little image over here. It says Lucasfilm 50th there on the bottom. And if we flip that around to the back, again, it's like a foil card back. It just has more information on Qui-Gon. And then it's got a timeline here of all the figures that came out in the 50th anniversary collection. So that's our Qui-Gon Jinn review. I hope you've enjoyed the reviews today. Again, there was a lot there for Qui-Gon. You can probably see my passion with Qui-Gon Jinn. He's a favorite character of mine from the prequels. Love the whole notion of Obi Wan having a Jedi Master, that Jedi Master, the one discovering Anakin. I just love that whole storyline. And Qui-Gon, as a result, stayed as a favorite of mine. He's almost like a father figure, Jedi-like character. Very strong personality. It was awesome to watch him fight Darth Maul in that movie as well. Even though it didn't end the way we wanted, I think we all had a feeling that it was probably going to end in a way where it was going to be a little bit tragic. So hope you've enjoyed the review. Please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.